One of the most interesting characters in the Lord of the Rings stories is the orc. Let's face it, the bad guys are just cool, at least if they're done right. And the creatures called the orc were done right. From their appearance to their behavior, orcs genuinely come across as an enemy you would want to avoid if you could. I'm always impressed when movies have the discipline to use these types of characters sparingly, because it creates a situation where when you do see them, it's exciting and tense. They haven't yet been overused to the point that their presence is unremarkable. And that's exactly the balance that was struck in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings production. So let's take a closer look at these villains we love to hate. The orcs were a creation that Tolkien wrestled with. And because Tolkien took this world he created very seriously, he wanted every piece of it to make sense within the mythology, and the orcs were a tricky bunch. In the Silmarillion, Tolkien suggested that the orcs were originally elves who were captured by Morgoth and tortured and corrupted in the earliest days of Middle-earth. This aligned nicely with the theme of Morgoth's inability to create life, but could only corrupt what Eru Ilúvatar had made. In later writings, Tolkien speculated that orcs might have been derived from humans, as their degradation and evil nature were more compatible with mortal men than with the immortal elves. In some letters and drafts, Tolkien entertained the idea that orcs might be soulless creatures, akin to beasts and animated by the will of their dark masters, rather than possessing independent free will. And in other notes, Tolkien hinted at the possibility of orcs being a mix of various corrupted creatures, including elves, men, and even animals. Tolkien often emphasized that orcs were products of corruption and domination, suggesting that their evil was not entirely of their own choosing, but rather forced on them by Morgoth and Sauron. The problem is, the notion of a race being wholly evil by nature conflicted with Tolkien's belief in free will and the potential for redemption. Alas, to be human is to flip-flop. And after completing The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien started to question whether it was theologically consistent for orcs to come solely from elves. He began to consider the idea that orcs might have been corrupted humans instead. This was partly to address the moral dilemma of immortal beings, like elves, becoming wholly evil without any chance of redemption. In the end, when Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son, compiled and published the Silmarillion in 1977, he chose to include the elvish origin of orcs as the primary explanation, making the idea of corrupted elves the official origin. Okay, so now we have an understanding of the rocky road to the creation of orcs in Tolkien's writings. Now let's look at how the orcs were brought to life for the movies. The making of the orcs for Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy was a combination of groundbreaking practical effects, prosthetics, and digital enhancements that brought these monstrous creatures to life. The team at the Weta Workshop played a crucial role in designing and creating the orc characters, ensuring that each one looked unique and terrifying while remaining faithful to Tolkien's descriptions. For the majority of the orc roles, the filmmakers opted to use practical effects. Practical effects will always be superior to CGI effects, if you ask me. The best way to make anything on screen look real is to use real materials. The makeup team spent hours applying prosthetics each day, including facial appliances, wigs, contact lenses, all to give orcs their menacing appearance. One costume designer commented on the unbelievable amount of foam latex used during the production of the movies. Hours and hours went into the creation of each prosthetic used, but that did not translate into a long lifespan for the piece. Facial appliances could only be used one day, and full suits would only last a week. Despite the huge workload, the cast and crew managed to share several lighthearted moments. The armor for the Uruk-hai was designed to look intimidating and menacing, but it wasn't always practical. In one particularly funny incident, an actor playing an orc was running during a battle scene when his armor started to squeak loudly due to the materials rubbing together. This squeaky noise was so noticeable that Peter Jackson couldn't stop laughing and had to call for a reshoot. For large-scale battle scenes, computer-generated orcs were added using the massive software, which allowed digital armies to act independently and realistically realistically. However, Peter Jackson's commitment to practical effects meant that many scenes still relied on costumed actors, creating a tangible sense of realism that contributed to the trilogy's critical acclaim and is a large part of why these films still hold up today. So let me know what you think. Do practical special effects make a movie more realistic, or is it the CGI components that make a film larger than life win out? Thanks for watching.